I think one of the great things about this agency is how it morphed out of really a support group of foster parents. And so it was a group of fosters and adoptive parents who kind of came together for potlucks, and they were supporting each other. And from that, it kind of morphed into a nonprofit. They were finding that there were gaps in services, things that they weren't getting. And that is what came to FosterAdopt Connect. Some people who may have been around for a long time, we did have another name, used to be the Midwest Foster Care and Adoption Association. But in 2016, we did change our name to FosterAdopt Connect because we were developing a lot of different programs. And that name fit kind of the new beginning as we were changing and coming up with different programming. Next slide. So what we do is I like to describe our program as kind of on the continuum of child welfare. FosterAdopt Connect provides services along the continuum of the child welfare. So we work with from prevention all the way through kids who have left foster care and families that have adopted. Next slide. So within Kansas, we have an office in Kansas City, Kansas, office in Pittsburgh. We have 9 locations in Missouri. We will be expanding in Kansas some more in the near future. But one of the foundations is a Sammy's Window. That is a clothing closet, resource center. Some of our bigger Sammy's Windows also have food pantries, but it is a place for, you can go to the next slide. It's a place, clothing closet, where families sometimes get children placement in the middle of the night, or you might get, I just got twins, 3-year-old twins, I don't have pajamas, I don't have clothing. They can go and get resources, hygiene items, sometimes baby items, whether that's different things. I need a high chair, I need things like that. Our Sammy's Window are able to get that. Next slide. We also do different clothing drive. We'll do underwear drives, socks, underwear, things like that throughout the year. These are just some of the pictures of some of our bigger ones. Next slide. One of our prevention programs, and we're super excited to be able to bring this back to Kansas, is our Kinship Navigator program. Next slide. This is a program that works with families who are caring for children that are not their own. We will be providing this in the Kansas City metro area, as well as in the Pittsburgh area. Next slide. We work with families to help them with the basic resources. Sometimes it may be childcare, it may be helping to enroll in school, it may be legal services. Sometimes we work a lot with informal families, so those kids who are not in care. It may be grandma is caring for her grandchildren. She doesn't have any legal custody, which has a lot of issues with it. So it may be helping to tie her with an attorney if she needs guardianship. But the main goal of this program is to keep those kids out of foster care and to keep them intact with that family. Next slide. So again, this is just the requirements. Children have to be living in the home. The biological parents can't live in the home with them. And we do work a program with the family. So we work on goals with that caregiver. The caregiver has to be willing to work that program. Next slide. So another one of the programs that we offer in Kansas is Community Connections Youth Thrive. Next slide. This is a program for youth ages 17 to 24. We work with youth who are aging out of foster care or who have aged out of foster care. Next slide. We provide this in Johnson, Wyandotte, Douglas, Shawnee County, as well as Reno County, which is down near Hutchinson. It's open to youth that are in transition out of care. They need to be motivated to work on goals. Again, we work on goals. Next slide. We work with youth on certain domains, such as housing, employment, social supports, mental health, transportation, education. Next slide. One of the great things about this program is also a match savings program. So we're able to help match a savings. Some kids can put that towards a car, they can put that towards housing. There are different components to that. Next slide. Another program that we offer in Kansas, we also offer this in the Kansas City area and in Pittsburgh, is our behavioral interventionist program. It is commonly referred to as BI. So if you hear of BI, this is that program. Next slide. BI was really the concept of our CEO, Lori Ross. It launched in 2014. It was an alternative to residential care, was to keep kids in their placement. And so it started with kind of a small pilot program. It has grown tremendously. We also are replicating this we've replicated within Kansas with some other agencies. We also have some replication with some agencies in Oklahoma. Next slide. So how the BI program works, BI provides in-home one-on-one trauma-informed services to youth who require behavioral management. So the child can stay in that home to build attachments with caregivers. One of the things that we do know is that trauma impacts the brain, and what BI work does is they work on neuro-STEM activities to try and repair some of that brain trauma. Next slide. And this just talks about the population served. There has to be a history of trauma. This just gives you a little bit more information on that. Next slide. Eligibility, we serve youth 3 to 18. Some of the frequent behaviors. We do not serve youth in the school, but this is a home-based services. Next slide. Goals of the program is placement stability, improve behavioral emotional functioning, increase the child's independence, and reduce the amount of time spent in a hospital or residential treatment facility. Next slide. This is some of the elements of the model that goes over kind of what BI does. Next slide. And some of the recent outcomes, which are pretty impressive. 82% of children avoided changes in their placement. 83% avoided residential or hospital treatment, and 95% showed an improvement in their CAFA score. Next slide. So another resource that we offer in Kansas is, it's actually 3 different services. It's Adopt Kansas Kids, which is the website for kids in Kansas that are eligible for adoption. K-Park, which is a Kansas Post Adoption Resource Center, and the Kansas Caregiver Support Network. Next slide. So the FosterAdopt Connect, we are the adoption exchange provider for the state of Kansas. Like I said, the adoption exchange program seeks awareness for the need for adoptive families for those kids that are eligible for adoption within Kansas. So sometimes you'll see, if you follow our website for that, there's we do videos with the kids who are eligible for adoption. You can check out that website, doing different new and creative ways to show those kids. For the Kansas Post-Adoption Resource Center, we offer different advocacy. We have advocates throughout the state of Kansas for families who are struggling with some post-adoption issues, or maybe they're in the adoption process and they're having some struggles. We have advocates throughout the state that can help them navigate through that process or that journey. We offer support groups, training, and different resource conferences. They had one a couple of months ago And then the caregiver is also for those caregivers, those kinship caregivers, could be some foster families that are going through that process. Next slide. This again kind of describes what I was just talking about, what those programs offer. Next slide. Those are all of the websites for those programs for your resources. Next slide. We also have in our Kansas office Connect Cafe. Next slide. They threw some extra slides in here. So the Connect Cafe, you can go to the next slide, is an interesting program. So the Connect Cafe is a program for youth who have aged out of foster care. They work at the Connect Cafe. There is a curriculum that is tied to this program. So they learn different independent living skills. They learn as they learn on the job skills. So they learn a trade within working within the cafe, they learn customer service skills, they learn about money, they learn about the food preparation, they learn about those things. But there is also another curriculum, and they learn different skills, budgeting, how to communicate, different things. And so we have several former foster youth who are working in our cafe. The cafe also, I think the next slide may show that. I'm sorry, but the cafe also is now catering, and the food is really good. But it's a great opportunity for youth. And that kind of in a very quick, if you are a Kansas program, we offer additional programming on the Missouri side. I stuck with what we're offering in Kansas. We will probably provide more programming over in Kansas as we continue to grow.
And we can go to the next slide, but Barb, I really appreciate this. And I will say, I love the cafe. The coffee's great, the food's amazing, and the service, it's just, you will be treated well in the cafe. It's a very great place. And they have all kinds of great local foods too, available, packaged foods. Um, so I really, I hope no one feels like, okay, all these great things are happening in Southeast Kansas. The whole point is we wanted people to really be aware of kind of what is possible and also who are some of the organizations they may reach out to. I know that if it's not something FosterAdopt Connect does in your region of the state, they want to partner and they want to grow. And so let's go to the next slides. And I don't know if, I hope people do take a road trip. I don't know if people have questions before we get into that, but I did want to say, what would it take? So say, some of these programs you're kind of piloting them in different parts of the state. Kind of how does that happen? Is that because you get resources or grants that help fund some of those expansions, or what would someone do if they're interested in some of this type of work in their region?
I think reach out to us if you're interested in this. If it's something there's a need, reach out. I can't probably sing enough praise about our CEO. She's pretty incredible. But if there's a need to reach out to us, we look for funding. And sometimes if we can get that funding, we can bring that service. Sometimes, identifying that, like I said, finding that funding source. And then where there's a need, we usually look for that funding source, and that's how we bring that in.
And I'm really curious, what do you think from your perspective, because you work from a really interesting perspective of families and youth and children involved in the system often. What do you think is important for schools to know, or how can schools support, the families that your organization works with?
I think just like agencies working together, I think the earlier we get in and work with families, the better it is for families. So whether that's, if you don't work in the Southeast, you can call our agency. If we have something, we'll plug them in or find something. If you work in the Southeast, agencies together, I have to sing the praises because it doesn't exist anywhere else. It is an incredible networking and collaboration. But I think as you see, the schools see things before anyone else sees anything. And so when you see something, to reach out, because that can be that first intervention, and we can provide things for families way upstream. That's my terminology there, that upstream, that is prevention work. And that is where we can help families, and that is where we can prevent that trauma of foster care, the trauma of abuse and neglect, is if we can help families way ahead. And schools are the ones that see that. And so if you don't know, don't hesitate to reach out and call. And I think even if you're in the Southeast, even if you do, I have a family, this is what I think, just throw that out there. And if you're in the Southeast, throw that out there in the agencies working together. I don't know what's going on. Throw that out there, because you'll get a lot of responses, or someone will come help you or call you. If you're in Kansas, you can reach out to our website and someone will call you back. We have advocates across the state, and we can call you back, and we will walk through it with you, and we will find a resource.
And Melissa Murray, who's from Coffeeville, I just happen to know that. I don't know where everyone's from. She asked about Sammy's Closet. Is there one in Southeast Kansas yet, or is that something you're?
We have a very tiny one in our Pittsburgh office. Hopefully we will get a bigger office in the Southeast, and we will be able to offer a bigger one. But we do have some items in there. Yep.
And I know there's a lot of school districts that work on and keep food and clothing. So I think even if not specifically for that purpose, but even if you have questions about kind of how to run something like that that's accessible to families who may have socioeconomic needs, whether it's families that are taking care of a child that all of a sudden is dropped in their lap and they're 3 years old and they don't even have a change, they have a change of diapers and that's about it. Certainly you should reach out to FosterAdopt Connect, but one of the things and what I love about this work is everybody is here to support and help each other. And in this series, I hope everybody feels very free to reach out to any of the organizations, and certainly to reach out to us, because we're presenting this stuff because if these are things you're struggling with and you want to talk to somebody that's done it, everybody is going to be willing to talk to you and work with you and help you and provide you advice on anything. So I think we've really hit really well on some of the approaches you take, such as Sammy's Closet or the cafe, to help families and children kind of meet their goals and needs. But if there's one piece of advice that you're going to offer to someone in a school or community that really wants to impact kids and families that are facing similar issues, that are either at risk of the system or involved with the system, and I'm going to ask first Barb to talk, but then I'm going to ask Anita and Jenny and Jill to kind of weigh in as we finish up. What do you think is the most important thing for families that are sort of kind of dealing with either in crisis and at risk of foster care or child welfare involvement, or involved with the system and want to do what's best for the kid, or want to have the figure out how to best meet needs? So Barb, I don't know what your thoughts are. Kind of what do you think is most important?
I've been doing this for decades and decades. I think early intervention, I think being proactive rather than reactive, better fits families, and is better for kids. And so I think never being afraid to reach out and to offer for families, I think it's always better to offer assistance. And sometimes I think, Bruce Perry says it well. Instead of always thinking what's wrong with you, to always look at it through the lens is what has happened to you. We don't know everyone's story. And so just to remember, a lot of times in almost every situation, there's a story behind the situation. And we don't know that story.